Welcome to the MHP Exchange, where the riches are in the niches. We'll show you how to invest your way into mobile home parks with real strategies, tips, and behind-the-scenes know-how to grow your cash flow. Stick around. This is where smart investing begins.
Everyone says they want to be in real estate, but very few people are willing to build it the hard way. And our guest today on the MHP Exchange is Bryce McMurry and Brent Dudley of Kaliber Management. They didn't raise a fund. They don't syndicate a dime. They've bootstrapped their way from zero to over 25 communities in the Mobile, Alabama market. And they've done it by cash flow, forcing appreciation, and really digging into operations. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what it's really like, the sacrifices they've had to make, the differences between mobile home parks and RV parks, which they own a number of, and really what it takes to build a community from the ground up. So with that, I want to welcome our guests, Bryce and Brent. Man, how you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Well, we've been trying to get you on for a while, and for those of you listening, I mean, I know Bryce for quite a while. We operate in very similar markets, and he's been super helpful just getting to know the market, and he's been a great resource for me back and forth. I mean, we've shared a number of different ideas and operational challenges back and forth. So I thought you'd be a great guest to bring on. But before we get started and do a little bit of a deeper dive onto some of these topics, Bryce, why don't you let people who don't know you, give them a little insight of how you even got into the MH space and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I started in real estate in 2005. Prior to that, I was with Uncle Sam. And actually, when I started in real estate, I was still on active duty in the military. Kind of transitioned from military life into real estate, kind of did this straddle thing where you're building one thing and still working in the other. And then moved from single family, multifamily, did some commercial, retail, office, and then in 2015, I think it was, my partner Lloyd gave me a call, Lloyd Osafo, and he's a West Point guy. We met in the military, and had a friend of his that was going to Harvard, doing his MBA and doing his capstone project, and wanted to pitch Lloyd, myself, my partner, on the idea of buying a mobile home park in Cleveland, Ohio. So anyways, I thought there's no way that we'd be interested in buying a mobile home park in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm too good for that. I do multifamily. And so anyways, he showed us, the slide deck and all this, and then he shows us the numbers, and we're talking through this, this project, and I just could not believe it was, the pictures that he was showing me, where it was at currently and where it was going to go, did not mesh in my mind of like, how is this feasible? So anyways, obviously that kind of ignited a fire, and I was like, I need to research this more, understand it better. And I've always been a turnaround guy, did lots of, flipping, single family, multifamily. And so this was the perfect segue for us. And so we got into the first one, and it's like, once you have one, you can't have enough. So you just, kind of cascades from there. So yeah, it's been great. We've kind of specialized in the value add since then, and we just keep buying the projects, and we love it. So create a win-win for our residents and for our company.
It's funny because a lot of the operators that I speak with and meet along the way, they don't start in mobile home parks, right? They just they somewhere along in their journey, they find that they've had all this other, opportunity sets that they've worked through. They have all these other deals they've worked through, and then they see, what it is to the thesis on mobile home parks, and they say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is where I want to plant my flag, and there's a pivot in there. And a lot of times it's guys who spec'd or they've worked in multifamily, and then they just kind of transition in. And Brent, you joined the team from kind of a different, you have like a different avenue where you joined Bryce, right? So what's your background, and how did you end up partnering or joining Kaliber Management?
Yeah, so mine was definitely a more circuitous route. So my background was, way back in my early career was in consulting, kind of on the technology side. And then I moved into strategy consulting with a big consulting firm that I spent about 12 years at. And I did a lot of mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, business development, just a lot of like new emerging market type stuff. And spent a lot of time doing that. And the only time I was actually touching real estate at that point was when we were doing these very large scale kind of Fortune 100 company deals. There was always real estate components to it. And so, there were aspects of that as part of our financial deep dive and kind of our acquisition models and things like that. So I did that for a while, kind of got tired of the road warrior lifestyle. And so stepped out and made a move with me and my family down to the Gulf Coast here in Fairhope, Alabama. And then I joined a company that I worked with for about 5 years that was a single family home builder and development organization, and had a few other companies that part of their portfolio. But I joined them as a COO, and we built kind of a vertically integrated real estate portfolio of about 17 operating companies. So we literally tried to touch everything in the real estate ecosystem, from land development and home building into title, mortgage, insurance, pest control, landscaping, you name it. It was kind of the entire gamut to do all the services-based stuff as well. And so we had a good bit of success on that front. And so I was hooked in on the real estate side. Just it was a new arena for me, and so I spent time doing that. There was some transactions that took place, with the home building company as an exit, and so I moved on from that organization into kind of a self-employed consulting work role where I was doing fractional work for other companies, kind of fractional CFO, fractional leadership roles. So I joined Bryce and Lloyd about 2 years ago in a fractional CFO role, and then as I got into the business with them, I started going to some of these trade shows in Biloxi, started looking at some of the new products, started really getting entrenched in the MH world, and I was hooked. I mean, for me, it was one of those things where in the single family world, right, you're always looking for ways to trim the cost down because it's not affordable housing, it's expensive. And all of the things that you look for were prefabricated trusses, prefabricated, frame packages and things like that. Well, in this world, it's the entire home is built in a factory and then shipped to site. And then as I started to see the new product, it was almost indistinguishable from site-built homes. And so I kind of started to click, right? I really started to understand that, this really is the future of affordable housing. And it doesn't have to have the standard stigma that everybody carries with it from the 70s and 80s. So now I'm in, right? And so in January, I took on a more full-time role as a president of the company. So here to help these guys and kind of help us drive forward and scale our company and grow. So that's kind of my long-term story.
So, and that's great. And you hit on a couple of topics that I want to get there. But when you talk about scaling the company and grow, like what is, and we'll get to how you guys started Kaliber, right? I always love to hear that growth journey and the challenges along the way that you've had. But where is Kaliber sitting right now? Like, what does the company look like today? How many communities you own? How many pads under management? Are you guys vertically integrated?
Yeah. So, I'll give you my 2 cents. So today we sit at, I think, 24 communities, 25 if you include our office, which is just for us. So really 24 active communities, about 2,000 pads. And for us, we have a mix of, in our portfolio, value add assets, kind of stabilized, needing infill assets, and then more of the stabilized front where, we're looking to do some of the new, agency financing and things like that. But for us, to grow, there's a few things that have to happen. So our strategic plan is to start new developments. So we've got 2 that are shovel ready to go, one in Baldwin County and one in Mobile. And then, we've got some other active expansion projects going on in our existing parks. So for us, there's not, a limitless supply of, acquisitions out there. So for us, we want to make part of our growth strategy new developments because we want to put new product out there and have new Class A type, developments for people to move into as well. So, that's kind of where we are on the trajectory front. And look, for us, we want to be 5,000 pads over the next 3 or 4 years. So we're going to continue along that path through really both avenues, acquisitions, where it makes sense, and then new developments as well.
And Bryce, you guys own mobile home parks, but you also have RV, and you also have a construction company, right? Is that just a holdover from, hey, you were in single family, you're doing a lot of spec work, and you said, hey, I need to have this construction team, and you also manage your stuff. You have the Kaliber management is basically the complete package, right?
We do, yes, sir. And it is it's like I kind of mentioned, we've always had an affinity for the value add. So whether that was, flipping houses where, kind of we first started to build that construction team to, now, basically doing turnarounds on parks. And so, so we have a full-time mason, we have full-time carpenters, electricians, master plumber. We have site work guys. We have, excavators, skid steers, bulldozers. I mean, the whole gambit that you would need to do, all the construction to build a park. And so, as Brent mentioned, we actually are doing a kickoff meeting after this, recording here, and we're going to be, starting construction on Monday morning. We're laying in for a new pad, or a new park in the north side of Mobile and Creola, Mobile County, north side there. So it's kind of the construction piece has always been something where we feel we can bring value, and it's worked out well for us. So that's what we've always had that part of the company.
Now you do that, but you don't. Obviously, that's not in your first park. You're not looking to do that construction, right? That's something you've got because you got comfortability with the space, and so you buy your first park back in 2015, 2016. And a lot of people could buy one park, right? And then you don't know what you don't know, and you get in, and sometimes it's beginner's luck, and you just say, oh, this is easy. And I always think it's like that second park where you've made the commitment to do that second deal.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like? Because at that point, at least for me, that's when all these other things I didn't know started popping up, and said, wait a minute, I didn't know that, right? So where was that? On that second community, and you're laughing. I don't know. What was that experience like? And that, because I would imagine at that point, you probably still had some other things going on, but that second one is where you're kind of making that commitment, like, hey, I'm really going to do a deeper dive in here. So what was that commitment like? Or what was that point where you're like, all right, this is where I really want to be?
Yeah, I think we actually, our second and third parks, we bought them within like a month or so of each other. And so park number one, we just had to do some infill. So, that's not too bad. And we did a little bit of cleanup. But park number two, which, just as you kind of described, it came with 30 park-owned homes. And, we never really wanted to own the homes. We had done the Frank boot camp and subscribed to we run a tenant-owned home model, and we do that for a number of reasons. One of the big ones is that we want our residents to be a partner with us in the community, right? And so the best way to do that is to give them a piece of the pie, and they have equity in the deal, in owning the home. And so, but that second park that we bought, it came with 30 park-owned homes, and little did we know at the time that there was. And I didn't have a lot of background experience in mobile homes. Had done lots of single family, had plenty of construction experience, but didn't have experience specific to mobile homes. And so, as we all know, the dimensions and the way mobile homes are built is a little bit different than the way a single family home is built. And you can't necessarily always run down to Lowe's and go get the bathtub that you buy at Lowe's is not going to fit in the mobile home. A lot of times it won't unless you're modifying walls and stuff. So yeah, there was definitely a learning curve on that second park. You hit the nail on the head. So, yeah.
So, and where did you, look into that and said, all right, this is where strategically I could de-risk myself, and this is where I can add some additional value, especially when you're dealing with, was it a moving target? Like, I came in, I think I'm going to own the homes. I think I'm going to rent it. Cause I know some people get kind of captivated by the top, line gross. And then, or was it, hey, I know I just don't want to own these homes. I'm going to offer the residents a really good opportunity to become homeowners, a great pathway to home ownership. And I'm just going to try to exit as quickly as possible. Or did you, was it just a kind of a moving target day one?
So Frank, I think you're bringing up a really good, when you buy a community, and you have a heavy park-owned home component to it, you don't want to underwrite that park-owned home component. But you're trying to get to the seller's number, and that really can be a challenge. And at the time, we didn't know that those 30 park-owned homes that we were buying had a significant amount of repair work that needed to be done in order just to be able to sell them. I think, that park was, at the time, it was 44 units. And I think like I said, there was 30 homes in there. And I think there was only like 6 occupied units. So we had just a ton of vacant homes that were just sitting there that required rehab. And we didn't, see all this, CapEx money that we're going to have to spend to get those things cleaned up and fixed and be able to rent those. And so, or to sell them, excuse me. So, because that's what we did. We sold them on lease options. We did have a couple that were financed through 21st. But, that was a significant lift. And so we had to kind of, we went and did some conversions. The people that were there, we converted from, a rental position into a homeowner. And that's another learning lesson there, is that not everybody that is a renter wants to be an owner. Some people do, and you try to encourage people and set it up so that it's financially a good deal for them. But, you also have to find a way, like I said at the beginning, that, how are you going to cover your costs? Because when you have that many, 30 park-owned homes, and these were, homes that were only 10 years old, we still had to underwrite that cost and figure out how to absorb that. And so, there's and the guy that we bought the park from, he did a all park-owned home model. So he was maintaining ownership of the homes and just renting them out almost like a horizontal apartment. And so very different business model. And it definitely, it's one of those things where, like you said, the top line number, it's deceiving because there's a heavy maintenance component to it. And people, I see this all the time. I mean, especially when people are having a hard time making their numbers work, they're like, well, I'll just rent the homes. But, it'll work great for the first few years. But then, about year 4 or 5, maybe 6, you're going to start, having things, roofs and ACs and just all this other stuff that, renters are a little bit harder.
And I think you're being very generous with 4, 5, or 6.
Year 2.
Yeah, might be year 2. I think you're being, because the if you don't have when people are tenants and they're not owners, they could just be a little harder on. They might slam the door a little harder. They might close the cabinets a little bit more harder. They don't check the filters. There's just not that vested interest because, hey, a year from now I'm going to be somewhere else.
That's right.
We've seen how our thought process on that had evolved. We knew we didn't want to own the homes, so we would go in there. But to your earlier point, you've got to underwrite. I mean, those homes do have a value, right? So you almost have a component of, hey, here's the cash flow based on the lot rent, and here's the asset value that we're buying, right? So those homes have a value, whether it's an NADA value, whether it's a shell value that you're placing to it. And that's how you kind of have to balance that equation to make the numbers work at the acquisition, because at the end of the day, you are buying something else, and it's how can I extract that and get that capital back to maybe lower my basis on the purchase.
Right.
And I think that's a delicate balance that you have to keep when you're underwriting one of these deals. But one of the things that we look at, and we, I think internally we have, different arguments on both sides, right? That's how we try to make the deal work. I think, I might think the homes are worth here. Somebody thinks, that it's worth there. And we're trying to figure out how to make the deal work that way.
Yeah.
We alluded to this earlier, and now you mentioned underwriting. So I'm going to jump into it. You guys, which I have, a lot of respect for, you guys essentially bootstrapped everything to 25 communities, which is, I don't want to say unheard of, right? But is definitely not the norm when you talk to people who've built out a portfolio. They've got a syndication. But you've basically taken the Burr strategy, right? And you've applied it to mobile home parks, and you've built up to 25. Like, how challenging has that been, or is it more rewarding because it gives you more freedom to operate that way?
I'll give you context from an outsider's point of view. So as I came into the organization, right, like I was no rookie to real estate and the leverage that's required to make a lot of it happen. So I did understand that. But, you're right. Bryce and Lloyd bootstrapped the entire thing from ground up. And it's not without its daily pain points, for sure. So as you go through the organization, right, a lot of times, you're doing the things in a certain sequential priority so that you can get certain assets stabilized, so that you can go through the refi process, so that you can unlock trapped capital, redeploy it back into the company. And it's a constant feeding process. And so, to work a model like that, you have to have some level of risk tolerance, I guess, to put it nicely. Some would say you got to be psycho. Some would say that you wake up and think, not sure how today is going to go. But at the end of the day, You just got to be creative, and you got to be willing to kind of keep your foot on the pedal and finding those creative ways to structure opportunities and deals so that you can find that additional capital to keep flowing through your operations. So, the luxury is getting some of the parks stabilized. Once they're stabilized, right, then you've got cash flowing assets and they're kind of maintaining themselves. And in certain cases, throwing off a little bit of cash to help in other areas as well. So, it's a little bit of triage day to day to make that work. But, it definitely keeps you on your toes. And certainly it keeps us looking on the horizon for new opportunities. I mentioned to you in a separate discussion once about, we're looking at CMBS loans now, right? So that we can take our stabilized assets and create more cash flow for us by taking something that we've worked really hard to stabilize, pull the cash out of that and redeploy it into many things, whether it's CapEx projects, operating capital, new acquisitions, whatever the case may be. So, there's a lot of that comes along with the bootstrap model, but, applause and kudos to Bryce and Lloyd for getting it from where they did to now. I think, a lot of weaker individuals would have given up long ago. So it's definitely been a journey.
Well, and I second that, because that's really putting your money where your mouth is, right? And you go there with a vested interest every single day, knowing that it's your capital at work. One of the advantages I would imagine is that, being that it's the same ownership throughout, if, project A needs the capital and project D, E, and F are doing well, I could just redeploy some of that cash flow there and make sure that business plan is getting executed, which is great. But part of the challenge is, hey, it's all my capital at risk. I've got everything in here. So now you want to make sure everything is definitely on point. And to your point, Brent, sometimes, listen, you're buying over, each one of these communities, it's not a piece of real estate you're buying a business that's attached to this real estate. And that business has a property management component, has a dealership component if you're bringing in homes, has a construction component if you're doing work. So that asset you're buying is 4 distinct businesses that you have to run, 3 or 4, that you have to run at the same time. And it's not easy, right? You've got to make sure that everybody's staying in their lane and all of it's chugging so you can get the best performance out of that asset, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
I would just throw in there 2 things, Frank. So, it definitely adds a different component when, you're playing with I say playing, but when you're working with your capital, this is my 401k. Like there's not an IRA honeypot, waiting for, me when I retire. Like, if Kaliber is successful, I'll be fine. I'll have a nice life. If Kaliber is not successful and it goes down the drain, well, then I'll be, living in a cardboard box somewhere. So, when you have everything on the line like that, you have a motivation to step up and make sure that execution occurs. And so the second thing I would just throw on there is that one of the things, we have that construction company. That construction company brings value and it helps us execute on these turnarounds at a lower cost than it would be if we were subbing that out, right? Because any construction company is going to need to make a profit. And so the construction company that we have makes a profit, and that profit is then rolled into the assets that we're doing. And so it helps us, keep our assets that we're trying to turn around at the top of the priority list. And so as opposed to if you sub it out to someone and you're kind of fighting for relevancy with that person, we don't have to fight for relevancy with ourselves. And then obviously the profits that we would, the other person would be, needing to make so that they can have a profitable construction company, we are capturing those profits and then rolling them back into our company. So
and that's such a key component. I mean, if you're in this space, you have to be vertically integrated, because if you don't, right, you're going to have challenges, or you're going to end up paying more. And in a business of nickels and dimes, right, a lot of times we're constrained in terms of where our we'll call them our customers, right? Our tenants, our residents can go. You have to operate inside that constraint, and wherever you can save, that just flows right back into the assets, into performance, into value, and that's ultimately where you want it to be. So that's an excellent point. And when you say like all your money's there, you have nothing else. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I know the person, and they're literally a professional gambler. That's their and I, we were just having the conversation, and I said, I couldn't do what you do. I will only bet on myself. Like I couldn't stop. I'm comfortable going into areas, markets where I know I could do my homework and I feel like I am in control of what happens there based on my performance. But I'm not comfortable allowing it go on a roll of the dice, right? Like that's totally, and I think if I could go deep on anything, I'm going to go deep on the things that I know and what I'm doing, because that to me is the best bet I can make. It's not a bet; it's the best investment I can make. So I love that strategy that you have there. Now, you guys, you're just not MH, right? You're also RV, right? Which a lot of people think it's similar because there's similar infrastructure involved. And sometimes you'll find these hybrid parks and you'll see people say, well, what's the difference? But there is a huge difference, right? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the dynamic of difference between the MH and the RV and how you run both of those. And you really run them both successfully.
Yeah. So, the key takeaway for me so far on this side has been that RV is a lot more hospitality focused. So, not that, we're not good people and, conciliatory when we're talking to people in our MH spaces as well. Certainly, that's an important part of, our park management style as well. But on the RV side of the world, we have a couple that are more destination style. So it's truly more like a hospitality organization, and that you've got families and amenities and, a lot of activities that you're providing for them, right? So, it's the marketing approach is different. The target that you're looking for is different. You have, it's a lot of transient and some semi-long term as well. So the business model is different, certainly on the revenue side. There's a lot of seasonality on the RV side that, you don't see on the MH. So you have to treat it very differently, right? So where MH has strong, stable, recurring revenue based on lot rent, homes if you have them, and predictability, the RV side is kind of a constant game of evolving your offering and what you can provide to prospective tenants. So, on that front, on those two dimensions, it's a very different structure. And so when we look at our internal financials, we do a lot of KPI measurements and monthly touch points with our teams. It's very different what we're looking at and measuring on the RV side than it is on the MH side. And it really comes down to a lot of those particular topics. Now, profitability wise, they're both very similar. I think we might actually see a little more profitability on the RV side in some cases. But again, you've got, up and down seasonality through your model. So on the financial side, the profitability might be higher, but the variance, can be higher as well, just depending on, the market, the target that's coming to your locations, and kind of the appetite for, visiting parks and some of this luxury spending, as they might call it in some cases. So, we find that those are different things that we have to contend with on both sides of the equation.
But here's why I asked this question, and Bryce, we've had conversations offline on this. Like for a lot of our history in the MH space, we stayed away even from hybrid parks. We just felt there was a different business. It just different set of principles that had to run there. And then we purchased our first hybrid community, and it's what we thought. It's completely different, and we're running a different business model there. How do you, like, what are some of the different touch points of somebody? Because we've seen a lot of operators say, I'm just, MH got expensive, I bought RV. And then when you talk to them, like, I'm getting out of the RV space. Like, I almost think that there's going to be a number of those communities that are going to get retraded because they just realize that, hey, it's not the same, right? Like, what are some of the, other than saying it's just hospitality? I mean, if someone's listening here, they're thinking about it, or they're looking at a park that's hybrid, what are the different things that you have to do to really be effective in the RV space?
I would say that number one is you're going to live and die by the manager. So, having a good manager on site to be able to manage that and create that hospitality experience for your customers is critical. So we try to hire the absolute best people that are out there, and then we provide ample training for them. We're very involved in the trade show, circuit, and visiting and meeting other park owners, and we will go stay. I pay for my staff to go stay at other parks because I want them to learn and see how other people operate, because it's an operational business. It's a hospitality business, exactly as Brent said. So I would say number one is you got to have a kick butt park manager. And then I would say, there's going to be a much more heavy staff component there because, you're going to need people that are mowing the lawns. I mean, usually the RV people, you might have some RV folks that will take care of their own, maintenance around their site. But most of the time, you're going to make more money off of your transient people, and transient people are not bringing, lawnmowers with them when they come to the park. They're there for vacation. And so, you're going to have, we use a work camper model, which is very common throughout the state parks. And so that work camper model enables us to basically trade a site for work that's done around the park. And so there's, a segment of America. It's really cool. They like to live, like the van life or RV life. They go from place to place and they want to see different parts of the country. Sometimes they have young kids. Sometimes they're retirees. Sometimes they're contractors that, are working in different locations. And so they'll come and join us for, 6 months or a year. And then they will, work at the park, and we'll basically trade them a site for, they get a free site in exchange for working, a certain number of hours each week. And so it creates a win-win opportunity also, and it helps you kind of control some of your costs. But you can't have a park that's just full of work campers, right? You got to have people that are paying too. Sure. So there's a balance there that's constantly evolving, and so those are probably the big things that I would say are make a difference.
So I'm going to share two things that you said to me that resonated, because I've spoke to you, extensively when we were looking at doing the RV, right? Because I know you had experience in there. We were in similar markets. One, it's easier to get a manager to go from RV to MH. That was then MH to RV, right? It's totally different mindset, right? Yes. That's something to keep in mind. And then two, it's a constant marketing. Like, it's every day, daily. I mean, do you want to go further a little on those touch points? Because those were, I thought, were some great nuggets. And as soon as you said it, I made sure I wrote it down and brought it back to the team. Like, hey guys, we got to look at this, and we got to make sure this, right? These are two things that we have to do. But do you have, you want to just expand on that a little bit?
I'll touch on marketing for a minute. I think, in fear of using the word hospitality over and over, really the point is, you don't want anything to be a race to the bottom on price, right? And so what you want to do is market to an audience that comes for what you can offer, right? And so you have to be able to deliver on the offering, for one, which is, what Bryce alluded to: good park managers, courteous folks on staff, good looking grounds, amenities that are functional and working. Like, those all take time, money, and people. So once those are in place, then you got to market that those are benefits of your park over your local competitors. So, the marketing aspect of it, originally we didn't spend a ton of time on it because we do like a lot of people, right? We go to the meta platforms and, market through Facebook and Instagram, go to the websites and, do our search engine optimization stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a bit more competitive than that now. So now, it's leveraging social media campaigns that are constantly evolving. It's, offering, different rate structures throughout the year because of the seasonality. It's targeting different groups, whether it be families or, snowbirds coming down or whatever the case may be. You've got different target audiences. And then, really the real takeaway is being able to get that data and information and be proactive with it, right? So if you get the information back and you realize that you're successful in some markets but not other, then being able to take that and pivot it to other markets that can be more beneficial to your long-term plan. So, it takes a lot of scrutiny and digging into some of the information and details. So we're finding new ways to do that, right? Whether it's through, new AI software we're using or new platforms, or really just talking to other people that are doing it and trying to get feedback that way. It's a critical part, right? Because I've always thought, marketing is your biggest investment for sales. And if you're doing it right, then there's a return. And if you're doing it wrong, then, you're just, competing on price with your local neighbors, and that's not going to help us at all. So,
right. And then you become a commodity, right?
That's
and then
exactly
it's a
right.
race to the bottom, and you're a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be able to showcase the value of what you're bringing there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I would say from a standpoint of the, being able to take an RV manager and use them on the MH side, we have a couple of hybrid parks too. And what we found is that, the manager that comes in that wants to, be in the RV space, oftentimes they want to create like a shared experience with the guest. And so they want to connect with the guest. They want to help the guests have a great experience. And so they're very conscious of that. And I would say that, not no slight to the MH managers, but like the MH manager is like living in a neighborhood and doesn't have the same perspective of like creating a short-term great experience for someone. The manager that is working, on the MH sector is, making sure that people, aren't leaving their trash can out or these other things that, you would expect from almost like an HOA or something like that that's managing the neighborhood. So just a different perspective. And I would say that it's easier to take somebody who is looking to create that hospitality space. If you have a hybrid park, it's easier to take somebody who has that hospitality mindset and then, have them also manage the neighborhood. Because they're looking to create that positive experience, right? And that's really, really important on the RV. If you come with hey, I'm going to put fine violations on your RV, people aren't going to stick around. They're going to head for the hills.
And you're probably going to get some bad reviews, right?
Right.
On top of it. It's interesting because we have that hybrid park. We've mentioned that, and one of the reasons why we kind of closed it down before we opened it up is going into this. If you have, you could sell somebody on why you want to buy a home here while there was redevelopment or turnaround happening because, hey, you're getting a great value and here's the vision of going forward. But if someone is there for the weekend, they don't care what the place is going to look like in 6 months, right? They care about, hey, what are you going to give to me during the next 72 hours that's going to make me want to come back? And you telling them like, hey, 6 months from now, this place is going to look great, but don't mind the pile of dirt in front of you right now because that's not the experience they want to have, right? They want to enjoy a weekend or they're there for work and they just want to have a peaceful, serene opportunity to be at a place that provides some value. So we had to pull back before we could move forward to make that work. Now, I'm going to pivot one more time because you guys are doing something that few people are doing, right? In this, because there's not a lot of people are building new parks, and you mentioned it twice. I know you were doing a deal in Summerfield, right? Like 300 Summerdale, right? 300 units, and now you have another one. And a lot of operators don't want to deal with the brain damage of going and saying, hey, I'm going to build this, right? So walk us through what this process is like, because so few people are doing it. I mean, obviously in this space, more parks close every year than are launched. And typically the parks that are being launched are in Texas, and you're doing it in a different market. I mean, when you walked into the county development office and said, hey guys, I got this great idea. I'm going to build a 300 unit mobile home park. All right, it's 300 units in yes. Summerdale, right? What was their response, and how fast did they throw you out the first time?
Well, they locked the door when they saw Bryce because they were like, "Here's an MH guy."
For those that don't know, Bryce is a pretty guy. They're a pretty big guy, so they probably didn't throw him out. They probably just they might have left and said, "I'm going to lunch," right? So,
right. It's funny, right? Because you've heard it 1,000 times, but it bears repeating. The first hurdle is educating them on what it is you're doing, because without fail, when they hear MH, the acronym, they immediately think 1970s trailer parks and, I don't want this in my backyard, NIMBY, all those things you hear. It's true. I mean, and honestly, by no fault of their own, right? Because they're protecting their constituents. They don't want, their high growth city to be grown the wrong way. So certainly respect, their role in that process. So a lot of it is education. We have to go in, we've done it in multiple locations, but educating them on the new product, actually, how the high level of quality that these new products are going to be bringing as opposed to what they have in their mind, showing them actual interior exteriors of some of the new product, and then putting together the master plan that shows them how we're going to develop it. And, in our community, it's going to be much more like a site-built neighborhood. Clubhouse, pool, pickleball courts. So it'll have an amenity structure on there. So it's targeted to attract families, right? And for us, as cliche as it may sound, I mean, we want people to have a path to home ownership, and that is the reality. And even in our market in, South Alabama, average home prices on the entry level are 300 plus. And so this is a product that is very high quality, very aesthetically pleasing on the inside and out, in a neighborhood that, is like any other neighborhood, but at a price point that allows workforce type housing, that is, blue collar housing, that is, affordable, attainable, all of those things that you hear. So, we have to go through that education and communication process with the city and really walk them through the dialogue. And, the difficult part is it's all true, but they see us as developers. And so there's a resistance to the communication, but you just have to kind of break down those barriers and have kind of that honest dialogue and talk about, the benefit to the community and kind of what our role is. And in our role, the other big hurdle for us is we own the property, and therefore we have on-site management. And because of that, we maintain the property at all times. We're not living in another state, letting the property, go to pot and get grown over and just look really bad. We have covenants like any other place. We have, rules and regulations. We background check for our communities. We have certain requirements and specifications. So we want it to be a place that people are proud to live. We don't want to build something that, we build it and forget it and move on. We want it to be something that, it's in our backyard as well, technically speaking. So we want to be able to drive by it and be proud of it as well. So that's a lot of the stuff that we have to go through with our local municipalities.
I mean, but have you found, because I know it has to be challenging, right? You go through this, you go through public hearings. Like what was the biggest challenge that you had in getting this plan approved from the local count? Well, even after showing them, because I'm sure you probably guys had, some. You could be factually correct, right? But there's that emotion on the other side that you have to kind of connect with. Like, so where has been that big pressure point that you had to get past?
Well, the biggest pushback obviously is when, it's an open forum, as it should be, and citizens come in that are local and surrounding the area. And so they have a lot of voice, and, that's the point, right? That's why we do those meetings. And so I think that's been one of the big hurdles, is convincing not just the city that we want to build something of quality, but convincing, local citizens in that area that is the case too. So we've done many things. We've held, separate meetings that, we'll invite, kind of an open house to come talk to us about what we're doing, get to know us, get to know the local community. Those are things that we found have been beneficial and helpful. As far as the process, right? Like what we're finding in our geography, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere, the lines between MH and single family residential are starting to kind of blur in regards to the requirements and regulations, right? And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like density, green space, all of those requirements that they have, they're starting to, ebb into the manufactured housing space as well. It does create a more consistent product, but we also have to be careful in our engineering so that we're meeting those requirements as well. Those are difficult, right? Because it might mean that we have to not be as dense in some areas as we want to be, but at the same time, it allows us to build, something that's of high quality and something that's aesthetically pleasing as well. Those are all challenges. At the end of the day, it's impossible to please everybody. It's just not going to happen. So we have to reserve ourselves to the fact that if we can at least get 90% buy-in, we're okay. But at the end of the day, we're open to talk to, anybody at any time about the process and about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I just throw something on there, Frank. I think, anytime you're creating a market disruption, there's going to be pushback and challenges. And I think that, for hundreds of years, the way homes have been built is that, materials are delivered to a site and a bunch of people show up on that site, and hopefully it's not raining, and then they start building, right? And so, folks don't realize it, but we're going through a revolution within the building industry. And, and it's my belief that, in 50 years, people aren't going to show up to a job site and build homes. They're going to, the homes are going to be delivered and they're going to be set. And so, if it's on some kind of a pilings, it'll be set with a crane, much like a modular would be, or it'll be set, like a HUD home is set. And so that's in our view and in our opinion, that's the future of home development. And those things, those homes, those HUD homes, like, we're building in these neighborhoods, like Brent alluded to, there's an evolution that's occurring in the development and the design of those homes so that they look more like a site-built home. And if you go to some of these newer communities where those homes are built, you can't tell the difference. I mean, it's very difficult to tell the difference. And so that's the goal, is to get to that point. We're not placing trailers, we're putting in homes for neighborhoods and building communities. And this is just the way we're doing it is going to change the way construction is done. And this will be the future of home building. It won't be people showing up to a job site. It'll be people showing up to install a home that was built in a factory, because you can control the weather, you can control the workforce, you can better control the materials. There's not the waste. I mean, it's environmentally better. At every single facet, it's better for everyone when a home is a factory built home. So you control quality, control product, all of those things.
You know what's interesting, and if you had applied, and I'm not you, but if you take that same 300 units and you say, I'm going to build a 300 unit condo complex, that's going to be modular home housing, right? 3-story modular housing. And so all of a sudden you're going to take the same, amount of same density in that area. You have some open space, but people are going to be living on top of each other, modular homes. There'd probably be less pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still running a homeowners association, right? You're still managing the grounds. All that's the same, but it's to your point earlier, it's the stigma of what type of housing it is.
Mm-hmm.
And rightly so. I mean, prior to 70s, 80s, 90s, you did not have a professional, it was more of a local owner operator who, was bringing in homes, and it was a lifestyle investment. It was like, I'm taking this income and I'm living off of it, rather than, hey, this is my business type of investment, which is what you're doing. So that's part of the education process. And that's super key. And that's it. And one other thing that I want to bring up, because you mentioned it in kind of some of the notes we went over before, and this kind of resonates, and I don't think this gets talked about enough, right? But when operators do, I do think you got to highlight it. And one of the credos that you have is like, hey, you want to do right by your residents, right? And you've said, hey, the chances are that you're more blessed than your resident is, so it doesn't hurt you to work with them, right? And you're looking to create win-win situations, which, I don't know if you want to emphasize, go on that, but kudos for you for kind of having that as your operating credo, because I think in an industry where it's very easy to point fingers at certain, firms that come in here that maybe are faceless or nameless, you guys are kind of doing things a little bit different at Kaliber.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the win-win thing is huge. There is plenty of meat on the bone for everyone to eat because of the business model and because of what we're trying to do. And so helping people, we see it, the reason why we do lease options, the reason why we, provide an owner financing, and we want the resident to own the home. We want to build a community full of homeowners, not of just renters. It's because we want to create that win-win opportunity. We want people to build the equity in their home, and that if they need to move, if life circumstances change, then they have something that they can sell or they can pass on to their children, and they're better for it. And so when there's buy-in by all parties, then everyone wins collectively. And so it's just critical. I mean, can't emphasize enough. And I know you guys have the same mantra. So I think in order for businesses to be successful, you have to have that viewpoint. So yeah.
And I look at it, the residents on the ground are the ones that make all this stuff, possible, right? And obviously we have stakeholders there. That's a critical part. But at the end of the day, we want residents that want to be there, that love the communities that they're in. And we want them to be our best sounding boards, right? Because if they're happy, they're going to be great sources of referrals and bring in family and friends. So you have to do a good job, and you have to look at creating win-win-win scenarios, I think, across the board. Listen, I know you guys do a lot of stuff on your own. You bootstrapped it, and you're in the middle of your first CMBS, which kudos to you. But if someone wants to reach out, find out more about what you guys are doing or some of the projects that you're involved in, how would they reach you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly you can go direct to our website, kalibermanagement.com, get our information and see our communities, or you can reach out to us directly by email. Happy to share those credentials here. But yeah, I mean, I'm at brentd@kalibermanagement.com. I'm happy to talk to anyone at any time. I think, sharing and networking in the community, it's a small industry, is the best way to learn. And so for us, we're not so prideful that we think we've got it figured out, because we're still figuring it out every day. So we're happy to talk to anyone and talk, learn about new ideas and get creative. It's kind of in our DNA as well.
Yeah. Kaliber with a K. So
that's right. Yeah.
Kaliber with a K.
We are Kaliber.
Well, guys, I want to congratulate you on the work that you're doing and wish you continued success. Thank you very much for being part of the program today. And I'm going to leave you with this. If you're out there listening, I'm going to ask you a question. Would you help someone you didn't know who's trying to learn about real estate investing, or finding, funding, and operating a mobile home park or an RV park? If your answer is yes, then give this episode a rating and leave a comment on your streaming platform. Share that review with us at the MHP Exchange, because that's how we grow the community together. And if you share it with us, I'm going to send you a copy of our after site visit report. It's the same report that we use when our team goes on site to analyze the highlights, the lowlights, the areas of concerns, and the opportunities we see to make sure that our assets are moving forward on their business plan and they're executing. So share it and give us a review. Until next time, everyone, happy investing.